All right, so far this week we've been learning about dystrophin. And remember, dystrophin is a protein, and it's a protein that's really important inside of a muscle cell. And why do we care about muscle cells? Well, one of the reason is because as we've been learning in this unit, there is this disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And in this type of muscular dystrophy, these kids are losing muscles throughout their life. And the reason for that is because they have dysfunctional dystrophin proteins. So this protein is not working normally in kids with DMD. So if we ever want to figure out, can we make a cure to make these kids better? Well, to figure that out, we need to understand how this protein works. So to do that, let's remember really quick just how your muscles work. So remember, when you contract your muscle, when you go something like that, you are actually making your muscle shorter. So if we zoom super close in on a muscle cell, it would look something like this. So here is a sarcomere. Remember, that's one little tiny segment of the muscle cell, and when you contract your arm, that muscle segment gets shorter. So you can see it's literally going squishing in. So you can even watch a little video that goes through this process, and you can see it goes, ooh. So that's normal. That's what happens when we normally are contracting our muscles. Those little sarcomeres are going, ooh, getting shorter. And that's what's happening inside of your muscle cells when you contract your muscles. So that's what happens in normal cells. So the reason that dystrophin is so important for your muscle cells is because it helps anchor your muscle cells to their surroundings. So as those sarcomeres are squishing together, if we like zoom super tight in on one of those sarcomeres as they're squishing, it would look something like this. So this is like super zoomed in on just like a little tiny piece as it's squishing. And you can see here's dystrophin, and it's just helping as that muscle is kind of like squishing together, those muscle cells. It's just keeping things kind of anchored so that it's not too loose and wiggly. So you can watch that one more time. So we're zooming super tight into one single sarcomere, and we can see that dystrophin is just helping to keep this from being like too crazy and loosey-goosey and wiggly. So if you don't have dystrophin, the reason this can be harmful is because now when your muscle cell is like moving back and forth as it's contracting, if it doesn't have that anchor, because your dystrophin molecule isn't normal, that dystrophin protein isn't normal, now it's going to be really unstable, and that's going to be bad. Anytime you try to flex one of your muscle cells, it's going to be super just wobbly and weak. So here's a picture. This is a real actual picture of a single muscle fiber, of a single sarcomere. This is something called an electron micrograph. So they're like the most zoomed in pictures that scientists can take. So this is a normal muscle cell. This is a sarcomere in a normal muscle, and see how it's really nice and organized. And if that muscle were to contract, it would go and squish together. Now this is a muscle of someone with DMD. Look at how like weird and wobbly and loose it is. That doesn't look stable at all, right? So sort of an analogy you can think of is a normal muscle cell is like a nice strong building. You know, the earth is not static, just like our muscles are not static. They're moving, right? But they're still like nice and strong, and it can deal with a little bit of movement. But DMD muscles would be like a poorly made building. So if something comes along, like an earthquake, that DMD muscle is not strong enough, and it just falls over and collapses. And you can see that's because this is just not, it's not stable enough. It's not strong enough. So here's a more scientific looking picture to help you visualize this. So here is a normal muscle cell, and we can see here's dystrophin, and it's anchoring the muscle cell to the surrounding structure. So it's really keeping that muscle cell nice and sturdy and strong. But in DMD, there is no anchor. That dystrophin protein is broken. It's not connecting the muscle cell to the outside. And because of that, it's wobbly and it's weak, and you're going to get bigger tears that aren't able to repair themselves. Because remember, when we exercise, you do get little tears in your muscles. That's normal, but they're small. In DMD, the tears are just going to be way bigger, and it's going to be harder to be able to repair those tears. All right, so the key idea here is that in people who have dysfunctional dystrophin, so the dystrophin isn't anchoring their muscle cells to the surrounding structure, that means that they're going to get these big tears, and that's going to cause permanent damage when their muscles contract. So it's going to cause permanent damage whenever they are running out and getting more exercise and things like that. Another way to think about it is, remember, some damage is normal. We can deal with that. That actually makes our muscles stronger. But in someone with DMD, they don't just get some damage when they exercise, they get a lot of damage, and it's more than they can handle. And that's a quick run through of why dystrophin is so important for muscles.